All right, and we're back. I want to solve a quadratic equation. In fact, there are a lot of ways to do that. I'm going to go bit by bit with these videos. First thing I want you to notice in this one is that right now we have something. It's a quadratic. It does not have an A, B, and a C term, if you remember the standard form of all quadratics. But it does have two pieces. One thing that I really want to note here is that it is set equal to 0. Remember that we talked about zeros, solutions, and roots all being the same thing. And those things are all where the function crosses the x-axis. I wanted to mention that because that happens, the function crosses the x-axis, whenever it is equal to 0. So when we start to solve quadratic equations, we want to make sure that we have it set to 0. Okay, that's a pretty important piece. Let's make sure we start there. Once we have that, we need to now turn our attention to what's over here. I have two terms. I know one thought is maybe I can combine these two, but one has a squared term and one doesn't. Maybe another thought is to move this thing over to the other side. And if I add 3m to both sides, I'd have m squared is equal to 3m, which is a legitimate math move. I like that. The problem with that is that now I have m's on either side of the equation. What I don't want is to make it more complicated, and it right now is just a little more complicated. So I'm going to suggest that you don't do that. And we have another method that we can use to help us with this. All right. We learned in a prior video that if we had two things that equal to 0 and they're multiplied together, then each thing is equal to 0. We call that the zero product property. Right now, I don't have that, but I could do that if I factored out the greatest common factor. So I have two terms, and in both terms, I have an m. So that is the greatest common factor. When I pull out that greatest common factor, I'm left with m from the first term. Let me bring down my subtraction. And then from the second term, I'm left with just a 3. Now that's still set equal to 0. And now I have a situation where I have, and I'm going to be consistent here, I have one thing times another thing set equal to 0. All right. With that being the case, I know that I can set this equal to 0. I can set this equal to 0. And then I can solve that. Okay. Let's do that. Let's go m equal to 0. That's this thing right here. And then I also have m minus 3 equal to 0. Well, this one doesn't need any solving. This one does need a one step. Let me add 3 to both sides. When I cancel out those 3's, I find that m is equal to 3. Okay, so when we have a couple of terms, we want to try to see if factoring will help us. All right. I think that'll be it for this one. I'll do some other problems with factoring on separate videos. All right. Thank you.